trying to understand more, trying to connect more. That's called empathy. Trying to be where you are, feel what you're feeling, and connect with you. And why? Like, so we can feel a little less lonely, and know that we're not alone, and know that we're still worthy.
Well, hi, everyone. Welcome to 2 Decades Deep podcast. This is a podcast about 20-somethings, and I'm so glad you are here. The weather's good, the vibes are good, so I know that you're going to love this episode. And whether you're tuning in on YouTube, Spotify, or now Apple Podcasts, I'm so glad you're here. I'm really excited for this conversation, especially because mental health is a buzzword right now. A lot of people are focusing on it, and I'm really glad that I can have someone who I went to school with, I went to church with, and now we're on the podcast with. I have Paul Kang. He is a mental health therapist.
What's up, Taylor?
I know, look at us.
It's all right. It's been a little bit
It's
in
been a little
college.
bit. I think the last time I've seen you was what, 2020?
I think that's correct. Yes.
Wow.
2020, maybe like beginning of 2021, if that. I think 2020.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think the last time I remember, it's like a group of us were at my house.
Yes.
Yeah, when I was in grad
Yeah.
school, and we were just talking about life. And so to see where we are now, we're in our own respective fields, and
Yep.
we're almost 30.
Yeah, we're getting close. Getting pretty close.
You're closer than me, though.
Oh, okay, I am. I always did. Oh, you did a master's too.
Yep.
Okay, so I always like wondered like where that timeline was.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am closer. So okay.
But you know what? It's okay, because
Yeah.
I'm super excited to have this conversation. It's been a long time coming, and I'm ready to dive all into it.
Yes.
But I want to know, before we get into our game, why therapy? What made you go
Man.
into that field?
Yeah. How much time we got? I'll try to give a briefer one. But I always tell people I didn't find mental health counseling until about a year and a half after graduating undergrad. And so even then, like, right, it's still a lot of ambiguity in my career search. But mainly, I felt like the career, well, it's very relational. I look at it very relational as much as it is psychology too, psychological. And so that relational aspect, like relationships are very important to me as a person, not just professionally. And I think it just naturally aligns with a lot of my natural gifts and talents in life. And so when I went to therapy for the first time and saw my therapist, I was like, oh, I like what you do, and I think I already do what you do. And so, yeah, well, I was like, why not go for it?
I think that's really cool that a lot of people can't blend their personal lives and their professional lives. And so the fact that you can
Yeah.
use your relationship building personally and align it with professional endeavors, I think is really, really cool. What's been your favorite part about being a therapist so far?
Oh man. I think how much it also benefits me. Um, yeah, I mean, I learn so much from my clients too, as much as I think they're learning from me too. I often try to let them be like the drivers in the room. But yeah, no, I think I've just grown so much in my own personal lives, and it's funny like when you're trying to like share research based things with clients and what can help them in their lives. It's like you're kind of talking to yourself too in the room. So I think yeah, it's much as been rewarding in helping others, it's also very much helped me as a human being too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Not in the sense of I'm not a therapist at all.
Yeah.
But I can definitely relate to, I feel like me and my therapist have
Mhm.
built genuine connections, and she's also like opened up to me about some things that
Yes.
she's went through. So I think that's like such a phenomenal aspect to you all's job.
Yeah.
We're gonna play a quick game. It is rapid fire. Use 5 to 10 words or less. So,
Okay.
so
We'll try.
not a thesis, but here we go.
Okay.
Therapy in one word.
Relationship.
What's a therapy what's a therapy cliche that actually works?
What's coming up for you right now? Like, how are you feeling?
If you weren't a therapist, what career would you have?
I'd be a basketball coach.
Self-care practice you swear by.
Journaling.
One Korean tradition you love.
Um, Eating rice cake soup on New Year's Eve. New
Mm.
Year's.
Common myth about therapy.
Something's wrong with you?
One tip for managing stress.
Listen to your body.
You're really good at this, James. It's like literally 5 the last. Everything
Trying
else has been
to.
like, well, let me think about that. Favorite post work activity.
Eating.
Um, Childhood habit from your Korean parents that stuck with you.
Um, Not using using the dishwasher. Dishwasher.
I just started using the dishwasher.
Okay.
Literally like 5 like months ago, but
Yeah.
my mom has that same tradition. If you had a superpower as a therapist, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Wow, as a therapist, um, to never get tired.
That's a good one. And lastly, what has been advice that you've gotten as a therapist that you've taken with you?
Um, be a safe place. Yeah, at the root of it, at the foundation, if like you don't know what to say, just be a safe place. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, well, that was it for the you excelled. You totally
Good.
excelled.
Okay, good.
So let's go into the safe space for a
Okay.
second. You
Yeah.
said that you wanted to be a safe space, and I think that the reality is a majority of our audiences are
Mm.
people of color,
Yes.
and mental health and therapy is honestly very new to people. Can you just talk a little bit about that and maybe how being strong or these stereotypes that align with some of our demographics play into that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wow. I feel like that can go in so many different ways, but like being a safe place, I think that's just the foundation of hopefully one part of the foundation of being a good friend. Um, and yeah, I guess I kind of think about because you highlighted how, being people of color and for me being growing up Korean American, like right, the whole is very highlighted. The collective is very much the forefront of everything. Like if and like it has its good and bads and it has like its positives and negatives, but I think the other side of it, like with emotions or being vulnerable or trying to share, there's like I feel like we've been taught in like this Western world to like this hyper individualism, and I feel like that like to help with that, like right, like instead of telling people, oh, you can share anytime, you can call me anytime, like people know that. But what is it like to try to really live that as like, oh, I'm a safe place and I'm showing you this in little ways, instead of just telling you, um, and kind of, but kind of meeting them in that. And so, yeah, I feel like almost like that individualism kind of versus collectivism. It's not as black and white, but I feel like we're taught a lot of this hyper individualism.
I totally agree. And I even think, and me and my Black women friends talk about this all the time about that we have to be the tough people. We have to be the strong people. We
Mhm.
can't show our weaknesses and
Mm,
things like that. And so a lot of my Asian friends also resonate a lot with that of
mm,
like, we have to be like, not perfect, but we just have to be very excellent because we live in a world where we just have to work twice as hard. So, can you just talk a little bit about that and how despite the, expectations that you have on yourself, you're able to still show up in a vulnerable space.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like myself personally, I always kind of lean towards I don't feel like sometimes I work that hard, and I think I've made sometimes I err too much on the side of like right, being mindful of my like self and trying to take care of myself, which is great. Like those are needed, like maybe having boundaries to like have self care, with like overworking yourself potentially. But I think yeah, for a lot of people, whether it's in my therapy work with friends I see, like it's this. I hear a lot of the term imposter syndrome, which I kind of hate because me and my classmates would always be like that's rooted in colonialism and capitalism. But I think like right when I hear imposter syndrome in the therapy room, I try to help with naming emotions. I think that's different because you're not an imposter. You have that job. You are certified. You are licensed. You are doing the job, and you have been trained, and you've done many hours into it. So this is you. This is part of you. Own that. But I think it's okay to feel insecure, a little anxious, maybe other feelings that are unpleasant that come up. But that's different to me from imposter syndrome. And I think to kind of help name those a little more instead of these kind of pop culturally mental health terms that we kind of hear. Um, and so, yeah, I guess kind of yapping now. But
No, one, I also agree. I do hate the term imposter syndrome. I think I fell victim to that at first, and then I realized, like, wait a second, like, no one took those classes for me.
yeah.
Nobody, wrote those essays for me. I'm the one that did that, and so I should be proud of that, and I should
Yeah.
own that. And I love that you have that thought process. But it seems like what I'm gathering from you, you're very self aware, and I think that it extends beyond your education.
Mm.
I think that's something that you probably have actively worked on. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but there's something that you have worked on. So can you just talk a little bit about your upbringing and how
Mm.
you starting to recognize that sense of self and
Mhm.
leaning more into your emotions?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess like kind of broadly, I feel like this is a very like almost common, kind of popular Korean American experience. But both my parents immigrated to the States. Grew up in central, I call it central Illinois. Like we're not part of the Chicago suburbs. Very rural. Like people were driving like tractors 5 minutes from my house on the road, and wearing camo and stuff, which is cool. But and so like I feel like that experience of just like and also going to church too, which is a very big part of Korean American like experiences. I grew up with like this sense of like, my life, when I look at it, I'm very blessed, very grateful. My dad worked hard, got his doctorate at Texas Tech, and was able to provide for me and my family. I think like mixed with some of that, along with, like, maybe, like, this, like, mindset for, like, the collective, like, right, to consider us as a whole, to, like, keep up this family image or whatever it might be. Sometimes that made it difficult for me to validate my own emotions, and that started to happen more in college finally when, like, I did feel, like, more of this sense of failure, and this sense of, like, being a disappointment, because almost kind of like that maybe you kinda peaked in high school, energy was kind of coming up, like, those questions, and so it started to really come up around, yeah, in college, and kind of having more of that sense of self, yeah, around then.
Yeah, I have a couple follow-up questions because you've mentioned this term twice, and
Mm,
just for those that are unfamiliar, you're talking a lot about like the collective.
mhm,
And can you just talk about like that mindset or what that looks like in your family? Because you've
mhm.
talked about that a couple times.
Yeah, but yeah, basically what I mean by the collective is like right the whole versus the individual. So like what is the good of the whole? Like I almost think of like some Disney movies. I always bring in like Disney movies in my therapy sessions too. Um but like Encanto, right? The grandmother wanting to be presentable to the community. And like this is our perfect family. This is our happy family, which who doesn't want a happy family? But right, as we kind of saw, maybe that came at the expense of how maybe the main character and her cousins and her siblings felt. And so yeah, I guess I mean like the collective of like, right, what serves and helps and benefits the collective, the whole, versus just the one, just a part of the whole. Does that make sense?
No, that makes a lot of sense. And actually, something that I talked about in shameless plug, my self love episodes. One thing I talked about is one of the factors that people do neglect their self care and their own individual needs is because of this collective mindset
Mhm,
and having to put people above themselves and like
mhm,
everyone's opinions, specifically within family or close friends,
mhm.
not like, just anybody.
Yep, yep.
But that plays a big part into that. And so you talked about peaking in high school and then going to college. Can you walk us through a little bit what your level of comfortability is. Like
Yeah.
you mentioned potentially being a failure. Can you talk about what type of things that were happening in that moment where you were
Mhm.
starting to question
Yeah.
yourself a little bit?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, for me, high school, I played basketball and tennis competitively. And so although I was kind of just generally maybe the filled in the stereotypical Asian American student, where I got my good grades. I had like general A's, B's, and then I got one C plus that my parents don't know about still. But college and going to the University of Illinois, which is pretty like competitive school.
It is.
Uh,
ILL.
yeah, I on my second year in the fall semester, I had like a 1.5 GPA that semester, and I was put on academic probation. And I remember just feeling, I don't know if I call them anxiety attacks. I had a high bout of anxiety going into an exam. After exams, I would kind of I would just isolate myself after those, like, kind of like this shameful feeling, and I remember I would just, like, go back to my apartment at the time and just, like, sit in the dark and like, this feeling of, like, where, like, this, like, a big snowball, like, big, like, fortune telling on the cognitive distortions
Mhm.
of just, like, "Oh, I failed this exam. Which means I'll fail this class, which means I'll have a bad GPA, which means I won't graduate or be a good candidate for grad school or a job, which means I won't be able to have money, which means I won't be able to provide for my future family." And like kind of like this big snowball effect that I did a lot
Mhm.
that brought up, oh, the sense of failure.
I appreciate you for sharing that. And I had my own sense of failures too. I think I was comparing myself so much. And I think I say I'm a recovering perfectionist, as someone who just puts a lot of pressure on
Mm,
herself. And then the second I mess up, I used to kind of go into these spirals and
mm,
also fortune tell as well. So I definitely resonate with that. So I appreciate you being so transparent about that. So in those moments though,
mm,
it's evident
yeah.
that you've picked yourself up and you've turned
Mm,
around. And so what did that look like, or
mm.
what was that mindset shift that you had
Yeah.
to start to pull yourself out of that rut?
I remember I tell people a lot. I think I started around my junior year. Um, when people would ask, because like in college or even now, like we always ask, like in college at least, it was like, what are you hoping to do after you graduate? Like, what is your plan? And we still kind of ask that even today. And I finally got comfortable with stop because I was on the pre-physical therapy track at the time. And I knew I never wanted to do that. And so I finally started to tell people, I don't know. And just like the acknowledgement alone and just acceptance and just sitting with like the discomfort, although I sat with it for a handful of years, even after, just helped. Just acknowledging it, just like being like, okay, I don't know. And I feel like that was just step one of just like being able to, oh, just like have like pick myself up or just even just comfort myself in my time of need for myself. Yeah.
And with those expectations, I know we talked about this like collectivism
Mm.
mindset. Can you just talk a little about like some of maybe like the pressures or some of the conversations you had
Yeah.
with your parents, like as you were navigating your rut?
Yeah. Oh man. Honestly, my mom, when we have conversations now, and she was different from maybe some other Asian mothers, immigrant mothers, who were kind of hands off. There were like some strict things, but like as I was navigating college, she did trust me a lot, and I did kind of maybe take advantage of that at times of just trying to buy my time, trying to figure things out. I graduated, didn't figure it out. And with my dad, just like maybe a lot of the toxic male stereotypes of like, we don't have those conversations. I just remember once in the car, he just in passing blurted out, "Oh, you just need to be able to like put food on the table for your family." And it wasn't like this like pressure, but for him, I know that right, and for maybe a lot of men, in his generation, that brings a lot of meaning and purpose to them to be able to do that. For me, that brought this like that it kind of enhanced my anxiety though, of like, oh my gosh. but I just got an F on my chem test in Chem 101, and so, like, how am I gonna be able to put food on the table if I don't know how many electrons hydrogen has? I have no idea. So, yeah, I think that pressure of, like, yeah, like, be up to think about everybody, I think it was hard to separate, right? They're hard for me to wanna do well in life, wanting to be well off, like, right? As a parent, I imagine they don't want me to be like, "I don't want you to do well in life, and I don't want you to make millions of dollars." I have no idea.
Mhm.
But for me, it was hard to separate, lean into that and be like, my anxiety and maybe some of the low self-esteem that was coming up. And yeah, it was definitely adding some pressure.
Totally. And what I am hearing and what I'm picking up on is like a lot of the things that our parents had to go through, like they had to go through their own round of struggles and their
Mhm.
own personal struggles and that are very different from ours. Like I even
Yeah.
think about my mom and her being first generation college student and like the battles that she faced. And
Yes.
sometimes they can with love, but, like, they can project some of that on us,
Yeah.
knowing or unknowingly,
Yeah.
so I definitely resonate with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with this, I do wanna go into, you being a male, you being a Korean man,
Mhm.
and so can you just talk a little bit about 'cause I love what you stand for, and some of your TikToks even talk about, men being lonely
Mhm.
and men, like,
Mhm.
often negating, like, their mental health and really being in tune with their emotions, which it's not their fault because that's not even encouraged all the time in
Mhm.
our society. So can you just talk a little about like how you were able to really pour into yourself and care into yourself?
I think what I do wanna highlight, I kinda try to bring, like, a compassionate lens as you're kinda saying, like, it's not their fault. Um, and it's also our responsibility to our relationships, to the people that we love and care about, to grow, to have accountability and ownership and correction brought into it, which is the hard part. That's the uncomfortable part, like the male loneliness epidemic, um, and it comes in so many different forms. But I guess for me, like I think I'm even trying to lean into some of those things of being vulnerable, and especially with like my male friends, my straight male friends, and trying to burden one another, which research shows like that's what makes relationships deeper, to burden one another. That and I'm trying to like grow in this like self-compassionate lens of like I am worthy of being a burden and not from like not trying to be like I am not a burden. It's like which I used to think a lot. I don't want to be inconvenienced. And like, I think we naturally all think that. Maybe we're all taught that. But trying to lean into no, like I am worthy and I am accepted even as and I'm worthy of love, of this friendship, of your care, of your kindness, of your support, even as an inconvenience, even as a burden. Which that like does something to your brain chemistry like crazy. And so trying to lean into a lot of that more and it's nicer than it sounds and it's actually a lot harder than it sounds. Um, so yeah, definitely like I feel like there's way more ways we could take that too.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, and even earlier when you were talking about just simply being honest about where you were at. Like you when people are
mhm,
asking, "Oh, what's next for you?" You're like, "I have no idea." And that level of vulnerability, even if it's small, can open up a lot of connection and it can
yeah,
ultimately help you be your authentic self. So can you just talk about like from a therapy perspective,
mm,
how can people start leaning into their vulnerable side because like you said it's not easy. Like
mhm.
sometimes I feel like I go from one extreme to the next, like saying like how are you? Oh, I'm not fine. Or like, how are you? Like, oh my God, last night, like I was
Yeah.
bawling my eyes out. And it's like,
Yeah.
whoa. So like, can you talk
Yeah.
about like the ways that people can gradually like lean into that a little bit more?
Yes, yeah, or Tommy had like his eye surgery last night or the burglary thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I always share with people for something to be vulnerable, it needs to be a risk. There needs to be like a cost to it. Like if I say this, if I share this with you, then fill in the blank, then consequence, then you're gonna run away. Then you're not gonna want to be my friend anymore. Like that's the vulnerable stuff. And that can help separate from oversharing versus like vulnerability. Because we can I can yap. I can go on for days. But sometimes, like, being mindful, like, if this feels good to share with this person, if there is that safety, that trust, the equity. And so I think being able to, yeah, like, kind of, number one, like, okay, is this risky? And that's where, like, maybe our agency and autonomy and our choice comes in, of just like, am I choosing to share this? And not because, like, I don't trust you necessarily, but because, maybe I'm still processing this, or maybe, like, I don't know if I can have my needs met in this relationship. I think that's, like, where we can have our sense of agency and autonomy, when sharing or thinking about sharing vulnerable things too. Um, and so, yeah, because, like, it can be really risky to share some things, because we're letting people more into us, which is great. That's what we want. It can be also hard too. So, um, yeah, I think, yeah, couple things that we can kind of keep in mind sometimes.
Yeah. And I also think it's important to recognize some barriers to vulnerability or some reasons why maybe people aren't so forthcoming with information based off of like their own personal experiences.
Mm,
And so I feel like you and I can resonate with growing up in religion and faith.
yeah.
I think that's a contributor. I think we've talked a lot about how like
Yes.
our being a minority can contribute to that as well. So can you
Yeah.
just talk about like the nuances to that and how you've been able to, despite maybe some things that you've heard or some experiences that you've had, you've been able to like overcome that to be your most authentic self?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think sometimes, like, with church especially, I think there's a lot of shame sometimes. And I know, like in church settings, well, oh, that's not from God, and or we didn't mean to. But I feel like a lot of times as I go to my current church community, and even like all my years in church, I think there is a lot of sense of, like, this shame. Um, and and that makes it hard to be vulnerable. Like, it makes it hard to sin, to make a mistake, to be wrong, or even, like, for a friend to be like, I don't think I want to go to church anymore. Like, there's a shame to that. Like, we won't share that. We'll just, like, bounce. We'll ghost, and no blame to that person, like, right? Because, like, you'll probably judge me. You'll probably say something, or I never loved God. You never actually knew God. And I think remembering to be a safe place, a safe space, for people to be brave, for people to be courageous. It's like, hey, like, I don't think I want to go to church anymore. And for me, coming at this lens of, like, um, okay, yeah, sounds like, oh, you put a lot of time and thought into this. Thank you for sharing. Um, and trying to understand more, trying to connect more. That's called empathy. Trying to be where you are, feel what you're feeling, and and connect with you. And why? Like, so we can feel a little less lonely, and know that we're not alone, and know that we're still worthy, even though I might not want this. And that's just like an example. But I think, yeah, a lot of times, shame makes it difficult to be vulnerable. And I think that can be planted in different ways for us. So,
Totally. And yeah, I totally agree. And I can totally relate to that, especially because I think in the past, I don't know, I don't remember exactly where it came from, but just like this Jesus in therapy, or I have to mask my emotions, or I can't come authentically
mm,
to God because it's disrespectful,
mm,
or maybe he can't handle it.
yeah,
And I even think about like just being corrected by that and just saying like, "Hey, actually he can handle it." Actually, if you notice people in the Bible, that have like literally have came to God with different types of emotions,
yeah.
and then it's been handled. And so I do think that's like a personal connection to it, but I know a lot of people in their respected faiths have also struggled with that as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, yeah, like you're kind of saying, like, people are almost scared of the emotions that they're experiencing, which I think we were taught those things to be either scared of them, to avoid them, to criticize them, because maybe they were criticized. But hopefully like to help like because I always say like I think Jesus was super emotionally intelligent. And like there's like that famous verse like Jesus wept. And right, like that was like a moment of empathy for him to connect instead of being like, oh, woman, like, don't you know I'm about to like do this miracle? Like, just watch me do my thing. But no, he like it says like he was greatly like moved or like greatly like sorrowed or saddened when he saw his beloved. Like he wasn't like, I mean, don't you know God is good? Like, and no, like she came up to him and was like, if you were just here sooner, like this wouldn't have happened, Jesus. Like she was upset. She
Mhm.
was grieving and that's and he didn't like shame her for that. He didn't turn her away. S- he said, "Oh, like you're hurt. You're you're sad. You're grieving. Let me sit with you in that for a moment." And then like we saw a miracle happen. And so yeah, I think being able to not be afraid is really hard to not be afraid of our unpleasant emotions. But I think that can hopefully foster those connections, those deep, authentic connections that we actually do really need.
And I think I've noticed that a little later in my life. I'm saying later in my life, like I'm like
Man, we got a few decades under our belt.
it's like okay, a year ago,
Yeah.
I noticed. um, because I did struggle with vulnerability and because
Mhm.
I wanted to be viewed a certain way.
Yeah.
But really, when I started to be a little bit more forthcoming
Mm.
about things and opening up to my community, I actually got better a lot faster. And
Oh my gosh,
so
yeah.
I do think that doing life with people
Yeah.
and sharing your life and like you said carrying your burden like having and allowing people to carry
Yes.
their burdens has been
Yes.
absolutely a whirlwind.
Oh yeah.
And so when you got your degree, your master's degree, and you started to go into therapy, what are some of the things that you wanted to address? Like obviously you address whatever people come to you, but like
Mhm.
what is that type of representation or what type of authenticity did you want to bring into the therapy space?
Yeah. I think I like to try to well yeah, initially started to go into grad school and was an intern and started to like practice a little bit in therapy finally. Initially it was like a lot of like yeah, individuals who are like first generation of immigrant families. I'm navigating like identity, belonging, and I think that can surface like the consequences or like the symptoms, whatever, of like through anxiety, through depression, through low self esteem, whatever it is. Um, and I think it's like gradually moving into to like yeah, like as you were kind of saying, like living authentically, being able to exercise like vulnerability um, yeah, like really leaning into like ourselves like emotionally. And so yeah, it's trying to like really I've noticed myself really focusing on that and even being really relational in the room, like giving people feedback of like if I hear a lot of men, like a lot of my male clients being like when they share like, oh, but like if I tell my guy friends that I want to talk about certain things or I want to hang out more, I'm just being needy. I'm being annoying. I'm being sensitive if I say that I'm hurt by that comment. And then I like share with them like, "Oh, like sounds like you're being critical with yourself." If I heard that from a friend, "Oh, like that's annoying. That's needy." I'd probably feel a type of way, but we are okay with doing that to ourselves. And so trying to like let go of that like initial part of it. Okay, you're criticizing it. You just feel like hurt. You just feel uncared for. You feel neglected. It's a really unpleasant emotion, but trying to sit with it. And so, yeah, I feel like trying to help with like that authenticity, the vulnerability. I've been really like leaning more into that, I think.
That's really good. And I want to go to that second part in a second. But something that you said is you really want to work with people who are first gen or
Mhm.
second gen. I know
Yeah.
that they use that term
Yes. Yeah.
interchangeably. So and you mentioned identity as well. So what are some of the topics or the things that you address in those spaces? Because I do know that a lot of first gen Americans and
Mm.
second gen Americans really struggle with the American space and also their countries that they immigrated from or where
Mhm.
their parents immigrated from, and they're trying to balance identity and the
Mhm.
nuances of their identity. So what are ways that you help them, or what are the things that you address with that?
I think one really applicable thing I hear is like I know we were kind of touching on it earlier of like imposter syndrome a little bit. And like right, we see a lot of like representation in different fields like through like whiteness. And so like maybe this like being Korean American, like I kind of saw a lot of that where it's like um number one, kind of like this internalized racism of like, oh, I have to only do certain professions because of status. Like I can only be like a doctor, a lawyer, engineer, whatever the couple of jobs we're supposed to get. And so like it's kind of difficult like being able to like navigate some of those spaces without some of that like, oh, this path is like carved, it's well worn. And because of that, it's like from this like now comes up this anxiety or and like how like right I think like right particularly first generation like right we don't have that support necessarily of like oh like hey son you're gonna go to college like here's what it was like when I went to college and this is what you need. I didn't have that. I was like hey like you're just supposed to go to college. I didn't know I was supposed to have like 128 credit hours for graduation. I didn't know what that was until my sophomore year of college. And then I just thought I was going to go to class, hopefully try to get A's, which I rarely did, and walk across the stage to get a degree. Like I had no idea about those things. And so like being able to try to like help with some of like those feelings of anxiety, the insecurity, I don't belong here. I think that's one applicable way that's I've been able to help with clients who might be first generation of and people of color, of immigrant families. A little more particularly. Sometimes it comes in other forms, like maybe in church, or other areas in their life. So
Yeah, and it's a that's why I know you and I were talking a little bit earlier about this, but it's very valuable sometimes. I think it's important to have other perspectives. That's not what I'm not saying, but I do
yes.
think that me having a Black woman therapist has been a game changer
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I know that she has probably experienced some, if not all of the things that I've
Mm,
experienced, whether it's a microaggression or
yeah.
whether it's someone touching my hair or just little things like that
That's
that can make,
crazy.
or just having the pressures to work twice as hard, twice as
Yes.
good,
Oh my
and
gosh.
you're Black, but you're also a woman, just
Yes.
all the
Yeah.
things. And so it's really nice that you can relate to some of your clients and you can be able to
Mm,
affirm them and try to show them like, yeah, I know that there are some setbacks that come
mhm,
with that, but ultimately like you will make it out of it okay. And the experiences that you had are only going to make you stronger and
mhm,
sharpen you for not only yourself, but the
mhm.
people around you.
Yeah, that is important to hopefully like foster that resilience, that belief, that sense of self. I also think as you just shared, like being a Black woman and like the right the narratives that we celebrate with like to kind of further almost like not support Black women or other people of color of like I think particularly Black women because like oh like look they got through it. Like, this single mother who worked 3 jobs, she's so resilient. She had to be resilient. She didn't have another choice.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're supposed like we're like failing her honestly. Um and like we're not supporting her in a systemic way. And that kind of furthers this narrative of like strong like Black women. They're awesome. It kind of further like reinforces that they don't need support
Mm-hmm.
and they're not like worthy of help. And like we see that like in different ways. Like when we see like I don't know, like when Beyonce recently won, there was a bunch of like crazy narratives going around, or like Serena Williams throughout her career of like the many drug tests that she had. I was like, bro, like what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I digress from there.
I could go on and on and on about that, but
Yes.
I digress because I could be we'll be here for like 20 more hours.
Yeah.
But with all we talked a lot about barriers and setbacks
Mhm.
and this, that, and the third, but there is hope
Yes. Oh,
in
yeah.
this life. And so can you just talk about like what type of hope that you provide for your clients or even hope that you provide in yourself
Mhm.
in navigating our mental health and just navigating the transitions in life and adulthood and
Yeah.
all of
Yeah.
that?
I think it was like in college. I really started to like journal and just like really lean into like this self affirmation of like I'm loved. I think right that came out of like a lot of my own relationship with God and my religion, but also just like I think just human beings and hopefully in like like I know like life can tear us down and like sometimes relationships there's like disappointments or jobs are hard there's disappointments and shortcomings that come up in careers and stuff um but this sense of like you're loved and like even like right when the shortcomings do come or the failures come that like that you got someone there with you like sitting there with you and like that um is game changer right to navigate those things on our own is hard and the hard part is like sharing with others that those happened right and but like on the other side of it when we can and when we do when people are receptive to our needs and to our things that maybe we're not so proud of about ourselves that changes so much in our brain chemistry like that tells us that we're worthy that tells us that we're loved and yeah.
Totally. And I wish that more people I know we say like everyone knows that they're loved by somebody, but I really wish that people knew that and
Mm.
also accepted that they're worthy of receiving and that and they're
Yes.
worthy of getting it. Um, one more question I have for you. What advice would you give someone who is on the fence
Mm.
about therapy or who is on the fence about taking those next steps to improve their mental health?
Yeah. Oh man. I think I think one thing is we heal in relationships. I had a friend who shared like they're like, oh, I just therapize myself. I was like, oh, that's interesting how it works. I was like, because I think that's so opposite of what we tell ourselves as like human development in like the Western world. Like at 18, you should move out. Um, by this time, you should have X amount of money. You should be able to, and like living on your own and stuff, which is who doesn't want to live on their own? But like it kind of reinforces that like you're developing if you're individuating and like you're being your own individual, like this hyper individualism. And like those things are fine. They're not bad necessarily. I think if we lean into it too much, it can be not the best. Like we're almost isolating ourselves. But we heal in relationships, and that's to me the therapy process of like you sharing this for the first time in your life with anybody. Hopefully, in your brain, that like rewires your brain to be like, this can happen. This person accepted me, still attended to me. Yes, you're paying me, but like you're still listening and being warm and kind and gentle. And hopefully, we can like do this with the relationships in your life. That's um yeah, we heal in relationships, and that's I think the one thing I want people to take away from for therapy.
Absolutely. And we end each segment, well, in each episode with a segment called What I Wish I Would Have Known.
Mm.
And so you have the opportunity to provide like perspective on something that you wish you would have known.
Mm.
So from that lens, what is something that you wish you would have known as a first gen Korean man that you
Ooh, yeah.
want other people to know if they're in a similar space to you? Is in particular with like navigating college and finding the career for then.
There's like this quote, I can't remember what it's from. I think it's from like this account I follow on Instagram called like Black Liturgies, and I love them. And I think the quote was like, rarely, if ever, do we heal. in isolation. And I think being like a Korean man, we're with this narrative of like I have to provide, I have to be stoic. I can't show you that bothered me. I think that just kind of reinforced a lot of those narratives of like of this pressure of like can't reach out for help or I gotta be. Um, what can be helpful, maybe not, probably not. But I think right that kind of made it hard to extend to others, to reach out to others, to my boys, to my family, to anyone else. And so trying to now, like, hopefully rewrite those in little ways of like, hey, like I'm here for you, and I'm also burdening you too. I'm not just telling you, hey, you should share everything with me, and me just, but I'm burdening you. Hey, when this happened, this bothered me. Hey, when this was said, I was kind of hurt, um, which is the hard part. But hopefully, like, right, oh, like, "Oh, man, like, sorry about that. Can you tell me more about that?" Bam, we're growing closer. We're going deeper. So, yeah, we heal not in isolation. Yeah.
Yeah. And I am so proud of you. I am so happy that you are the representation that people need to see, especially in the therapy space. And I just appreciate how candid and how
Mm.
vulnerable you were. A lot of people I feel like are going to be really blessed by this episode. And so I'm glad I got to have you at my mama's house on the skin.
Yes, thank you
And
for
it's been
having
great to
me.
see you 5 years later. But I
I
think this
know,
is
wow.
such an amazing conversation. And yeah, I'm just really glad that you're here.
Yeah, thank you, Taylor. Glad to be here.
Yeah. And always remember, we are uncovering who we are one chapter at a time, and we're unfolding at our own pace, and we're exactly where we need to be. Take care, everyone.